right. So ladies and gentlemen, just like we did on Wednesday, I'm tossing out some ideas for you to revise, okay, so that you can get ahead of the curve. And certainly when you think about this, I know that writing can take time. So you may be in various places. If it is helpful for you to revise at least what you can now, I think it's a really good idea. But I'll have this accessible for you if you still have to kind of finish up and then return back here. I will say that I am trying to make everything as accessible to you as possible, whether you are in class or out of class. Here's why. I'm recording a lot of lessons now. So for instance, with everybody being like here and there during basketball or at the end of like jazz band stuff, I've recorded what you missed. So there doesn't really need to be an excuse for you to be confused. You can listen to the lesson on your own time, okay? With that also, I want to bring up two things. One is a general change, okay? I was particularly slammed at the end of the period, or at the end of the last trimester with not only stuff that I was taking at the last minute, because I wanted to go down to the wire with notes to be able to give you enough time. But also I had a whole lot of late work to put in at the last minute. So with that in mind, I am kind of shifting my policy. What you can count on is that I will still put up and publicize a post to Canvas so that it appears on your Canvas calendar, a deadline, okay? That deadline is really for you to know that on that day or at that time, we're pretty done. There's no more class time awarded for that particular assignment, and that is the time that we are moving on, all right? But you'll also see on Canvas that there is a window to turn that work in. So if you're done on the deadline, fantastic, turn it in on the deadline. If not, you have 2 weeks to get that assignment completed before the window to turn in that assignment closes, okay? That's awfully important because with my policy before, I was making it available to you up until a week before the end of the trimester. That's not feasible anymore, okay? So 2 weeks after that deadline, 2 weeks, hopefully it's fresh enough in your mind, it's fresh enough in my mind to actually be able to help you. And after that, we will have more than have moved on from that assignment anyway, so there's really no educational academic benefit because you're probably phoning it in and there's no point, okay? So it will be closed and you will keep the, I think it's usually somewhere between 20 to 30% score that you're awarded just for kind of sitting through class in the unit, all right? Questions about that? All right. Other thing is, I'm going to use more the feedback I'm getting from Mr. Hoyland up in the tech office, where some of you probably already had conversations about this, but all of our computers, mine included, is equipped with a software that kind of counts and dates what we do on our computer. So your patterns, your every search, the amount of time you spend on certain websites, that defaults to emailing home, okay? That also, I've signed up for the emails for my students for that particular class period. I don't necessarily care what you're doing outside, but I can say my 6th period students, I want to see, you know, like we've got class work time on Chromebooks from this day to this day, I want to see that like this kid is working on what they need to be working on. If you're not, you know, like I can't control you. You do what you want, but I'm not helping you. Okay? So like I block you from requesting for advisory. I don't seek you out to like remind you of the deadline. You made your choice for how you wanted to spend class time. Okay? So keeping that in mind, this frees me up. This is how I'm looking at it. I don't like, you know, like probably if you're doing something else, you're saying, I don't really need this time. I can do this on my own. Super. Like you don't need me. So that frees me up to really like go after and help the kids that were making the most of class time. And they are, you know, because they use the time, they probably have more need of my feedback. Okay. So that's kind of how I'm looking at that. Any questions about that? Okay. So today, hopefully, pull open your paragraphs that you have written so far, or the writing that you have open so far. I want to show you the end of the rubric, give you some questions to think about as you go through that, kind of my advice for how to fix those things up. And then we will have some work time. So particularly if you were on the PEP bus on Tuesday, wait, was it Tuesday? Monday. It was Monday. If you were gone on Tuesday, I recorded Tuesday's lesson, which is where I went through the first of the revision, how to revise for your topic sentences and your clincher sentences. Also how to revise for, what was the other thing? But the lesson is there if you missed it. Okay. So first thing we're going to look up is paraphrasing and quoting. If you weren't here, how this rubric is going to work is that I want everybody to be proficient. That means you don't have any more work to do. You can do everything I'm expecting a ninth grader to do. So this would be everywhere from A+ down to C+, okay, depending on how well you do it. So for paraphrasing and quoting, you're proficient if you are including both paraphrases and quotes from the sources, and your quotes are appropriately introduced to blend the quoted material into your larger sentence. Okay? So, questions to ask yourself, just to make sure that you're really nailing this. First, do you have an even mix of direct quotes, so the stuff that gets quotation marks around it, that the words that you're borrowing exactly as they appeared in the original article? That's what I'm talking about with quoted material or quoted research. Do you have an even mix of that stuff? And then the stuff you put in your own words, the paraphrase material. Okay? I think it's really, really helpful for an assignment like this to actually go in and graphically highlight what is what, so that you see, do you have as even a mix as you think you have? So my suggestion here would be to go through and highlight all of the quoted research, or the sentences that include quoted research, in yellow. And then go through, and where you see citations but you've put the research in your own words, you've paraphrased, go through and highlight those in green. Okay? You should be able to see that you've got as even a mix as you can manage. Okay? All right. The other thing, we talked about it on Monday, but have you revised yet for your drop quotes? Remember, a drop quote is when the actual sentence starts with a quotation mark. We want to avoid that. So I want to see some tag at the beginning saying, studies show that, or according to the Des Moines Register, or this is a significant issue because what goes in your own words, and then you use the quoted material. So making sure something like this, where your quoted research gets introduced. I'm going to give you 2 minutes right now, either if you're not quite here yet, to type like the wind. My challenge is a sentence in the time provided, right? Then you'll have 2 minutes if you feel like I've got enough meat to work with here. Go through and highlight in yellow and in green your quoted and paraphrased research, just so you can check the evenness of what's represented here. Okay? 2 minutes.
How many words ago?
That was a, oh no, we actually got that one, but that was our last week's, the last week's challenge. Finish our book. Are you doing what I'm asking you to do? You're good. I think it does matter. If not necessarily for this one, definitely for what we talked about. There was the balance of your notes and your own perspectives. So you want to skip that, and only use exactly what you need. Exactly what you can't explain. Trust your voice maybe a little bit more, but that'll kind of come out on the next slide. Good. I'm seeing both yellow and green, and this is making me very, very happy. You should know what's quoted in this, right? Also, your citation should just be the last name. Okay, so you can absolutely return to this if you're not quite done or you're not quite fixed up just yet. All right, but for the sake of maximizing class time, we're moving on. The next item of the rubric is having a balance of research and your own voice. Okay, remember, we're synthesizing. So you need to borrow from research, but the whole process of synthesis is not the work of coming up with research materials that you put in a list in paragraph form. That's not synthesis. You are borrowing bits and pieces from other people's work, other people's ideas and thoughts, and then your brain is pulling those ideas together to repackage them into the topic that we assigned. So in this case, the problem associated with implicit bias, the solution associated with implicit bias. All right. So to be proficient, you need to pull from at least 3 sources and communicate your own ideas by interpreting the research. You also want to quote and paraphrase at the right spots. So for those of you who might be looking at a screen and you've got a lot of note there, you're probably needing to dress this up a little bit. You maybe don't need the quoted material for anything more than maybe a phrase. You certainly don't probably need more than 3 sentences of, more than 2 sentences even, of stuff from your notes right in a row. All right. Also, that your paragraph includes more of your own explanation than of your notes. So think about it like 1/3 to 2/3. When you look at your paragraph, 2/3 of the writing in that paragraph should be out of your own brain. out of how you make sense, out of how you transition from one idea into another idea, that's coming from you. And a third of that, your support, is coming from the quoted and paraphrased notes. All right, so what you should be asking yourself, have you balanced your use of notes and your own explanation? Going through, you can highlight the quoted or paraphrased notes in gray. That's already probably what's on your screen in green or yellow. Okay, so you could leave it like that, I don't care. All right. But then go through and highlight your own voice, your own ideas in turquoise, and you should see 2 to 1 your own voice. The vast majority of your paragraph is going to be your ideas. So if you need to add to it or maybe scale back on the notes that you used, you should be able to do that. All right. Lastly, and this is really important, does your paragraph make sense? If it doesn't, it's probably because you haven't explained the connections between your ideas. It's a really, really easy thing to mess up or an easy thing to just forget to do. Okay? When you're so close to a topic or you've researched and thought a lot about this, that you just assume that it's going to make sense to everybody. But really do take a step back. And as you look at what's quoted and what's from your own head, think about, okay, if somebody hasn't read these 4 articles about implicit bias, would this make sense to them? Have I actually informed them? Or do I maybe jump too hastily from my note about healthcare to my note about police brutality? The smoothing of that, the transition, is what's really important there. Okay, so see if it makes sense. I'll give you a couple minutes to highlight this. If you need to use those couple of minutes to type more of your ideas out, great, use them. I think you could scale back on like that quote. You can read all of it. So create some space for your own voice where you can maybe present another application of that, or so like if you can kind of like say a new example that you kind of pulled out. How do you have this before? Okay, so your notes would then, based on these instructions, the stuff that you borrowed from another writer gets turned into gray. And then more of your article is going to be your own ideas. So how do you transition? How have you interpreted what the research says? That's what you highlight in your place. So guys, don't think right now, if you're highlighting a ton of notes in this paragraph, don't think that you've done this wrong. Okay, you did a rough draft. It's perfectly legitimate. It's actually probably what I hope that you would do is now you get to go back with a revisionist eye and squinch down your use of research and maximize the amount of ideas or other examples that you come up with from your own head, like all of that now is the whole process of revision. So take what's there and make it better. I'd say focus on one or two. You decide. If you do one really well, great. If you do two with a little bit less specificity, but you've explained and really transitioned nicely, it's kind of up to you. Hey, I'm showing you the rubric. Nowhere on this rubric does it say anything about length. So it's just, did you do the job?
I need to charge my phone.
So you can work on those.
You got something to say?
Last but certainly not least, digging into citations, okay? If you're not quite finished maximizing your voice, I totally understand that. You'll have some time, both today and tomorrow, to be able to do that. But if you are trucking along with me, looking at how you've introduced and cited your evidence, to be proficient, you use and punctuate your MLA citations correctly. Meaning, I should see just the author's last name, the author of the article, just their last name in parentheses at the end of the sentence that holds the quote. I also need to see that any information that you borrowed from those notes, either paraphrased or quoted material, gets cited. Okay? So checking in, have you used at least 3 different sources in each paragraph? Highlight those citations in orange to make sure that they are correct, that they are not maybe right next to the research, but maybe you add some more explanation in your own words at the tail end of the sentence. Your parentheses are always going to go at the end. Just like this, it's the last thing you'll see before the period to end the sentence. Last check, have you revised your drop quotes? Have you added those quote introductions when you use the words of the author exactly as they appeared in the article? And lastly, are you citing both your paraphrased and your quoted material? Because both need citations. All right? So go through and just make sure, is my period in the right place? You'll notice here, guys, for quoted material, you don't need, it's not dialogue, you don't need a comma here. So make sure that that gets taken out if you've added those in. You've got your citation, and then your period after, in this case, young. Okay? That's what I have for you. Okay? So take the next 5 minutes or so. I've got one last thing to tell you before the end of class, but take 5-6 minutes to work on whatever you need to work on, whatever pushes you forward. Okay? Whereas you think about it, if you've used great time over this unit, you don't have any homework tonight besides reading. If you have to catch up, tonight would be the night to do that. Okay? We didn't do SSR, so it's Thursday.
Do you want to die as a mechanic?
Well, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I really never
Yeah.
got it.
I like it.
Oh, yeah.
It's my birthday. I'm starting.
Math.
I always seem to feel like everyone in math.
Miss Babe. Miss Babe.
Makes sense.
But
I mean, it just never made sense.
it's like mathematics, one answer, it's like finding problems with architecture, and then literature, like words and expressions.
I forgot the word. Now I know.
Totally. I would feel a whole lot better right now if you had this paper pulled up on your computer and asked me But what I'm missing is a bunch of extra choices.
What did you say?
So like,
You're the one talking. Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you. Step in.
So then you have prerogative since you.
That'll give it to him.
Oh, okay, I'm just looking at this. So here, the paraphrase, or a paraphrase. Right, if it's replicated. And the fact that you're starting the sentence with a quotation, that means it's a add that in.
I don't like this.
Now, what you can lose, I would choose one of them to add your paraphrase in.
I don't like
Because you've got the representation from 3 different sources, that shows synthesis. But it's not showing like even pitch representation of both paraphrase and it's still back here getting an exchange. Work in the flow.
Just put poison on my face. Hello? What? Abby, you need to make a Big Mac. No, go up.
He's such a little kid.
Just go up.
Okay, well, so,
So, y'all need to go up.
so looking at like, those are
He's such a little kid, man.
Who?
You.
according to like
Who
my
is it?
suggestions, looking at the.
What you eating?
Go on, you must stop
They
there.
wanna like
You eating your Big Mac?
go.
Yep.
Don't kill me next time. What you eating? I can't see this water.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. As you are wrapping this up, and we kind of have to play it by ear, I am, if our period tomorrow gets shortened
For what?
because of like a pep assembly or, no, you don't know that we have a pep
Why?
because our state basketball
It's a
team
rival.
is now going to finals.
Yeah.
But moving on, the next step of this is taking off the training wheels. The training wheels for this unit has been in research, where you didn't have to find your own sources. I found all 4 of your articles for you. I also cited those articles for you, okay? And I showed you step by step with an example even about implicit bias, how to write about those sources. So the next step would be then to choose a topic that would interest you, to find 3 or 4 pieces of research of your own, and see what you can do without these training wheels. All right? So I am asking for your input about what you would like to study. When you click on select your topic on this form, what I've done here is organized kind of topics associated with societal issues or cultural concerns. And actually, all of these have been inspired by your We Need Diverse Books reviews that you've written. So if you wanted to think about equality and rights, if you wanted to think about education and incarceration, or mental and physical health, war and politics, love and relationships, or social class and economics, or if you wanted to suggest kind of a broader topic of your own, great, do it. Certainly the topic that you choose does not have to be inspired by the book that you read, but it could be, okay? So then, well, what's an issue associated with that topic that you'd like to learn more about? And I've kind of typed this up. For instance, if I chose the topic mental and physical health, I might want to dig into a problem I saw when reading the book Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda and look into the connection between teens' use of social media and the increase of teenagers diagnosed with anxiety disorders. I don't know exactly what the problem is there or what causes that connection to be so. And I certainly don't have any idea about the solution, but I know there's an issue there because I've heard about it. Okay? So your answer, like, this is something that like you can think about. If you know right now what you want to do, great, type it in there. Okay? But otherwise, I want to be able to kind of categorize you and work on this over the weekend. So I'm going to make these due by the end of the day tomorrow. Okay? What's that? Your topic for your own independent research. Okay? I think graphically it looks just fine.
Okay, then I'll just go.
Yeah, does that make sense? How like I see your voice in how you transition from one
Yeah.
to another.
Yeah. I just wanted to also. Where is it? Like Beginners Association. Don't know. Like there's two words
Don't know they have.
have like I just need
Try me.
have not
Don't know they possess.
that's the word I was looking for.
Your first name. I'll say your first name.
Anna. So like which topic is you?
That was Lindsay, but that's Miss.
Okay, so mental and physical health. What do you want to study?
Huh?
Okay.
Bernard,
And anxiety
second.
students,
No,
anxiety for
I have a, no,
the average teen.
I have a Noah. Downward.
Now I have no kids. No.
I have Noah in math again.
No, second.
4.
I have supposed to be required for me and no kids in class, but of course they didn't listen. Charlie. The government's
You even read it all? Fast reader.
Put my stuff back in. It's not the Donald Trump. This is regular. You wanna make that? Shut up.
You got to try to stop one, shut up.
Do you wanna get it right? I hit that what time?
Wait.
Wait. Find you out.
Who's we? Good friend.
Hi, guys. See you tomorrow.
I know, Jay.
I'm just being taken up. Watch out.
What? What?
Yo.
You my ball.
It was about to fall out.
Where are you sitting from?
I don't have this name.
Well, I'll be moving periods anyway.
Where are you moving to?
I think fifth
That's
or sixth. I have to get my period changed because I did not live there. It depends on whether I can do what I think I can.
Hi, Drake.
Because I'm taking track, I'm doing track right now. I don't really want to take the E track. I also want my study hall, my open hour 7 period, so. I was offered it.
Hi, guys.
Tried.
You can.
Hey, where do I sit
Yeah.
now?
But you're not allowed to.
Hold on, I'm turning it
Are
on.
able to not have full schedules?
Well, I have an open hour and I just,
Where do I sit?
I'll show you.
like, I can technically have off-campus lunch my junior year, but like right